If I am for myself, what am I? Who am I? If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And I think it's very important to teach our children, and then when they grow up, to teach their children, to give of themselves, to help the less fortunate. I think Israel is not just our security blanket, it's our country. And I feel very strong, should never forget that this is the only thing we have that we can walk with our heads high, because there is a state of Israel. And we can help them in different ways. We can help them with moral support, financial support. Let's not lose the faith. If we survive 2.5 years in a grave, the state of Israel will survive forever and ever.
Kol Chabad is running the National Food Security Program on behalf of the Israeli government. So we're reaching 30,000 families every single month throughout the country. And we started packing a lot of the dry goods that we distribute. We pack them here. Without food, you can't keep a job. A kid can't focus in school. Babies without formula, if that's what they need, they won't be able to develop properly. Any stage in life, so I've yet to meet someone which could survive without food. And that's how we get the volunteers to come in and help us with that process of putting on the labels, the stickers, filling the bags, sealing them, weighing them, putting them in boxes. Today we had Mexico, we had students from Canada, of course some Israeli families, fellow from Australia. You never know who's going to pop in that day, and it's always a thrill to meet another person from another part of the world that wants to take time out of their visit to Israel to help another person. You know, we've taken on this magnificent commitment to the government of Israel to facilitate and take care of National Food Security Program, but we can't do it on our own. There's a lot more families that need to be reached, and it boils down to funding. At every opportunity, we invite partnerships, people coming to Israel will help in hand. People that can't come, they could help us from afar. But it's not a challenge that we could claim to be ours. It's everybody together. Everybody could do their part on their own level, and to help us reach every family in Israel. We look forward to the day when we'll be out of business, when there'll be no more need.
Zahava, Burak, in Nowy Korczyn in Poland. My parents were conservative Jews. My father was a Talmudic scholar. They were lovely, good people. They showed us a lot of love and understanding. We were a very close-knit family with my father's brothers and my mother's brother and sister. We were a very close-knit family with our cousins. The entire family was very close. I remember Friday night, we always had the Shabbat dinner. We had to wear special clothes, little black patent leather shoes, white little socks, and bows sometime in our heads. And my parents emphasized a lot about Judaism and how important it is to grow up as traditional Jews. Yes, my parents always teach us the values of Judaism, the values of the holiday. They always explain to us the importance to observe the holiday. And of course, they always told us to believe in God. And we were really brought up in a very conservative Hasid. I wouldn't say Hasidic. My father, they were observant Jews. My father and mother went to shul on Saturday, on Friday, and they brought us up to be good Jewish children. My father, in addition to being a Talmudic scholar, was very philanthropic. He always believed in giving to certain Jewish causes. He belonged to many Jewish organizations. He was a Zionist. Actually, in our town, till 1942, We knew that there were war. We knew a little bit what was happening. However, we did not know at all the tragedy about many people taken to camps and what was really happening in another town. I remember one incident in 1942. In the middle of the night, we were all sleeping. It was in January. It was below zero. And a German officer knocked the door at my parents' home and told my mother to open the door. My father and my mother woke up, and I woke up as a little child, and my two other sisters were sleeping. And he walked in and he told my mother to put on music and champagne, that he would like to kill my father. Only he was so sadistic that he could not kill her without music and champagne. And my mother asked why, and he said, because I just wanted to kill him. My mother refused to put on music, and she refused to serve him wine. And when I got up, I saw this tall man, about 6 feet tall, wearing a fur coat, fur gloves, a hat. There were rumors that this was Himmler in our town. And he was very sadistic. And he started to threaten my mother again, if she will not serve him music, if she will not serve him wine and music, he's going to kill. I was a little child. I took a chair in the kitchen. I took a kitchen knife. I pointed the knife to his back, and I told him, if you will kill my father, I will kill you. He looked at me, and he turned, and he says, oh my God, I have a little child home. I could never believe that she will be as brave as you are. And I was very serious. I kept holding the knife to his back. Apparently, as sadistic he was, this touched him. Took out my father in his pajamas. He didn't let him get dressed. He tied him to a tree. He didn't allow my mother and us to go out. He pointed his gun in our direction. And he went out and he shot 2 shots in the air, and we ran out and he left. And he told us that he was so touched with my bravery that he left my father tied to this tree, only he did not kill him because I was so brave. The next morning we find out that he killed 2 dogs in town, and my father, thank God, was alive. My father was speechless. He couldn't talk. He was shaking. My mother was crying. And I just could not believe till I saw really my father being alive, that my father is alive, because we were sure that he killed my father. And from this point on, we had a joke, my sisters had a joke in the family, that I was my father's favorite, because I saved his life. There were Germans, only we never met them on one-to-one. This was the first incident. And after this incident, very shortly afterwards, in the middle of the night, we heard loudspeakers. All Juden heraus, what means all Jews should leave to the railroad station. About 6,000 people emerged from their homes, leaving everything behind. They told us we couldn't take anything. Only they also told us that we are going just for one night, like it's a sleepover. We didn't know where we were going, what's going to happen. We did not know that we are going to go to camps. My parents wanted to take some of the belongings, and I told them they cannot take anything. So they hold on to the 3 little girls, and as we were walking to the train station, we passed by a house. There were very good Catholic people, Christian, Polish Catholics, who lived in this house, and very casually this man used to say to my father, if things really in town get back with bad with the Jews, if I can be of any help. And as we were walking to the train station, my father whispered to us very quietly, "Let's go in for one day." And we escaped walking the line to the train station, and my older sister Rita, unfortunately, did not hear my father's whispers, and she continued walking to the train station, and she was subsequently took to the camps. Yes, we went in, my mother and father, I and Sarah and Miriam, unfortunately not my sister Rita. And when we came in, we knocked the door, and my father asked the Polish couple if we can stay for one night, that we were ordered to leave the home and that we are going someplace. And the Polish people closed the Venetian blinds, the doors, and they told us, they welcomed us with open arms, and they told us to come in. And we stayed the same night in the house. After that night, we were sure that the next morning the wind will blow over, we will go back to our home. We didn't know where the people went, that they went to concentration camps. And the Polish couple informed us that there's no more Jews in town, that if we ever leave this place, that we will be killed, because the newspapers and the radios reported that all the Jews were taken to the camps, and there's not one Jew left in town. And the Polish couple and my parents decided if there's no other way, we cannot leave. They took shovels and they digged in a sub-basement, practically a living grave. And hoping that this is going to be for 1 week, for a few days. And unfortunately, we stayed there for 2.5 years, taking shovels. We were too little. We couldn't participate as children. However, I do remember the Polish couple and my mother and father, and they kept digging and digging, and it was practically a grave. They put down a blanket and a few pillows. It was the size like 5 by 7 and maybe 23 inches tall height. We couldn't stand up. We couldn't lay straight. We had to lay, if one person moved to the right, the other person had to move to the right or to the left. We couldn't stand up. We crawled on our knees. We couldn't speak. We had no light. We had a little kerosene light that it was attached close to the chimney, and that's how we could see a little bit. We had very little air. It's very hard to believe that we could have survived, that we did survive in a living grave for 2.5 years. Very shortly afterwards, we had an incident that one of my cousins, she and her mother and father and 3 of her brothers were taken on the same train, the same night from the same town to the concentration camp. And on the train, her mother realized that they're going to a death camp. And people were starting to faint inside. They had no air at all. She broke a window on the train and she threw out her little girl who was 8 years old. Her name was Sarah. She lives now in Israel. She threw her out from the window to the snow, hoping that somebody will find her and will maybe rescue her. After she landed in the snow, a Polish couple found her, and the man asked her who she is. She was afraid to tell first her name. He asked if she's Jewish, and she said yes. He asked her what happened to her parents. She told him. And he took her home, he cleaned her up, he gave her some warm clothes because she was laying in the snow. And he gave her 60 zlotys. It was like $60 or maybe less. And he told her she should find her way someplace because he cannot save her. He was afraid to risk his life. And the little girl remembered the Polish couple that also was their neighbors in the same town in Nowy. And those were the same people, Józef and Stefania Maczugowski, that they were people known that they were very friendly to Jews. And she came in and she told them what happened to her, not knowing at all that we were hiding there. And she asked them, can she stay for a few days with them? And they knocked on the plank floor that we were underneath, the sub-basement. They told us the stories. And of course, my parents were thrilled and delighted to ask him to bring her down. And she survived together with us. My mother was weak from time to time. I remember my father giving her sips of water. And we prayed that a bomb should fall in the house, they should poison us, just not to be killed from the hand of the Nazis. And thank God our prayers came true, that we did survive, even in those terrible conditions. There was no routine, absolutely no routine. We were mostly very quiet. My parents did the talking, the teaching. We asked little questions. Why can't we go to school? Why can't we play with children? Why can't we go out from the bunker? And our parents explained to us. And my father constantly said, don't lose faith in God. There is a God. And just wait and we will survive. And goodness will prevail. And thank God his prayers were answered. And when it really got bad that they were offering very big awards, the Polish people were very scared. If nobody suspects that they're saving some Jews. So they spread a rumor in town that we drowned in the Vistula River, because we lived on the Vistula River, hoping that nobody suspects that, or maybe somebody knows that we weren't yet killed on a camp. And he spread those rumors in town. Well, there was an incident about 6.5 months before the end of the war. There were 3 knocks on the plank floor, and Józef Mazochowski came down to us with a Bible. And he told us, to my father and mother, to put a hand on the Bible and to say a prayer, because unfortunately we will not be able to survive anymore. What happened? The German army came in and they took over the Polish couple's house, the Mazochowski's house, and they decided to make the regional headquarters in this house. And they told the Mazochowskis that they have to leave the house, they cannot stay there any longer, that this will become now the headquarters. At this point, they knew that we wouldn't be able to survive, that we will die without bread and water, and they will not be able to care anymore for us. In a way, we were relieved that perhaps we will die. Only our own concern, my parents and our concern, was that if they will find out that he was saving Jews, that they will be killed and their children will be hurt. And we again begged for poison. And my father pleaded with him. And he said, as long as we live, you will live. And they had to leave. And at this point, we just looked at each other and we felt that who is going to die first? Everyone very quietly prayed to die first and not to see the agony. And for a few days, we had no bread, no water. We had absolutely nothing. And the Polish people left the house. And the German headquarters became the house where we were underneath the plank floor. The only thing he didn't thought of it, because he was just concerned that if they will find out that the Polish people were saving us. And he felt if we die, we'll die like little flies one by one, and maybe they will never find us. And maybe they will never discover us, so this will be better. We heard every word. My parents understood German, and they heard every word when they set up the headquarters. All the ammunition was sent to the house. There were many soldiers there, and they heard all the reports to the German headquarters in Berlin, reporting that things are not going very well for the German army, that there might be a time that they will have to escape, that there are no Jews in town, and still pleading with them to try very hard to find out if there are any Jews any place left before the war is finished. We were afraid, and we were not afraid. We were happy because we heard bombs falling. The house was shattering, sometimes glass was falling, because they were bombing already certain places in town. And we prayed that the bomb should fall on the house, we should be killed, and nothing should happen to the Polish people. So we knew that this is going to be the end. We never dreamed a miracle that we will ever survive. And when they were reporting constantly to the Berlin and to different headquarters, they were openly talking how bad things are for the German people. And at this point, if one person slept, the other one had to be up, that if somebody will cough or have a dream or cry or something, that they should not hear. We didn't even speak above a whisper. We constantly were just whispering to each other. We forgot that we can talk even. And my father just put his finger on his mouth and he said, was a sign that we should never talk, and we knew that the German people are still up. At night when they were sleeping, we sometimes whispered a little louder. And after a few days, a miracle happened. We heard again the 3 knocks, and the Polish people, the woman, lowered a piece of paper and she told us what happened. She came back and she begged the German people, the soldiers, she knew that we are going to die, and she took a risk. She came back to her own house and she pleaded with them, would they let us stay as a housekeeper in her own house in Poland that she and her husband built. The first German soldier hit her and he says, how dare you? This is now the headquarters, you should not come back. The second German soldier said, look how clean this house was kept. Maybe we should give her a chance. She is a strong woman. She will keep clean the house. And she promised she will cook and she will clean the house. When they took a chance and they told her yes, she said she will take just one little room, that this will become her quarters. So she stayed there for the first night. And she begged them, will they allow her husband to come back? At first they said no. Then little by little she persuaded them they should allow her husband to come back. And the kids. And in one room, she and her husband and the kids stayed. In the middle of the night, when the German soldiers were sleeping, she made believe that she was cleaning and polishing the floors. She was laying on the floor 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. And she gave us 3 knocks on the floor, and there were notes, the bag, please don't give up, you're going to survive, the war is almost over, and she lowered some bread and water to us, and this was heaven at this point. We were so weak, we could not stand up. We couldn't even drink the water. And there is a God. We did survive 6.5 months under the German headquarters. I have never heard of a story during the Holocaust that anybody survived under the German headquarters. The end of the war, when we heard glass shattering and the bombs were falling very close to the house, practically like next door, we were in heaven. We were very happy because we felt we are going to be killed. However, it didn't happen. We heard that suddenly one night it's very quiet. We didn't hear any noise. They did not yet come down to tell us that the war is over because they were afraid that still it's not over. Only we didn't hear any noise. The night before, we heard a lot of happenings in the home. They were throwing things, packing and screaming. And my parents understood that something terrible is happening, only they did not know as far that this is the end of the war. And the day the war ended, they did not tell us. The next day, my parents heard loud voices, Russian, like the Russian army, and the Polish couple came down and they tell us, you can speak to us, you are free, the war is over, you liberated. We didn't believe. We still did not speak, we still were whispering to each other. And they said, please don't worry, the war's over. However, we cannot yet liberate you or take you out, because there's still a risk that if somebody will find out that you're Jewish, they still might kill you. It happened many Jewish people who left right after the war, who came out from hiding or from camps, were still killed. There was still a lot of anti-Semitism. And the Polish couple, again, closed the windows, the shades. They took us up one by one. We could not walk. They bathed us. They gave us clothes, and they wrapped us in blankets, and they wrapped us in towels. And after this, they took spoons and feed us with a little bit of food. They were afraid to give us food because we hadn't eaten for 2.5 years, and they were afraid we shouldn't get sick and something happened to us. And they told us, unfortunately, that we will have to stay there for a few more days because they're still afraid to let us leave the house. We already were upstairs in the house, only nobody was allowed, and even the kids could not see us yet. We were able to talk, only we were not used to, or we kept whispering. And they said to us, stop whispering, you're free, you can talk. Only we were not used to talking. We were just afraid to even look around the house if somebody's going to see us. My father said to us, you see, I told you there's a God. God is watching over us. I didn't believe that we will survive, however, we're free. And the most important thing in life, that we should not forget who we were, what our ancestors were, and we should tell the whole world that everybody should know what happened. Then they made us pledge to them, for my father to tell and my mother, that we will never reveal who saved us, that we will never tell anybody that we were hiding, because they still were afraid that if somebody will find out then that their life is still in danger. So my parents pledged to them that they will never reveal. After this, my father and mother and the 3 little girls, we tried to walk and we couldn't. We saw some Russian soldiers who liberated us. And they thought that my parents were drunk because we walked like drunks. And they stopped my father and they asked him where he bought vodka. And my father and mother says, we are not drunk. We did not drink vodka. We just have a hard time walking. They didn't believe my father. And they took a breath test. The first Russian soldier was very angry. He says, you're not telling the truth because you are drunk. And then when they took the breath test, they saw that my father did not drink and that we just couldn't walk because we were not used to stand up for 2.5 years. And they let us go. And my parents made the way. We tried to get home to our house. My father wanted to see what's happening in our house. We went to Novikorchin, and our house was bombed. The factory was gone, because the factory was taken over by by the Polish people. A Polish commissar took over the factory, still the war in the beginning. And at this point, my father felt that we should make our way to Kielce, where my uncle and aunt lived, and maybe their house is still standing, and we didn't know what happened to them. So we went to Kelter, and their house was standing, and we went into the house of my uncle and aunt, and we lived there for a while, for a short time. And one evening, about 6 o'clock in the evening, just before my mother was going to make some supper, we heard that something fell in the front of our door. And this is in Kelter. And my other sister was going to reach for this package that fell next to the door. And my father saw, and he says, "Wait a second, don't touch this. This looks suspicious." And my father recognized that this is a suspicious object, and he felt it looked like a grenade. He called the police came, and it was a grenade. And we were very lucky that my sister didn't pick up, because she would have been killed. And it was a grenade that we were explained by the police that would have exploded the whole house. And at this point, my parents felt, okay, we have to move on. We cannot stay in Poland too long. We have to leave. Well, the fact that they find out the Jews are there, because we had to register. We had to register in town with the government, with the Polish government. We didn't tell them where we were and how we survived. We just gave our names, and we put advertisement in the papers if anybody has ever heard about my sister, if she survived, and what happened to her. So we advertised in newspapers and billboards, and to the Jewish agency, then they were already in Poland, and also to the Polish authorities. And the matter of fact, after the grenade, my parents decided they don't want to stay any longer, and it's time to leave. And we made our way to go back to, then first to Munich, hoping and dreaming that perhaps we'll be able to immigrate to Palestine, because there was not the state of Israel yet in 1945. Yes, they told us that my sister died in a concentration camp, that she died of typhus, and she was in few concentration camps. And after they told us, we said shiva after her, my mother, my father, and we naturally mourned, and we never believed in a million years that she survived. And again, another miracle happened, that after we said shiva, and after we knew that she is dead, and people told us that they saw her dying in concentration camp of typhus, because a lot of people in the same concentration camp died from typhus. She was in Buchenwald, in another camps, and she was a little child when she was growing up in the camp. And what happened? That by pure miracles, that some of the people who knew us and knew her read someplace our advertisement that we are looking for her, and they find out that she was alive. And they notified her that they saw in the paper advertising that we survived, that we're looking for her, and there was an address how they can get in touch with us. And about late in the afternoon, towards the evening, my mother and I were standing at the door in Poland, and standing on just, waiting in the front of the door. The car passed by, and a girl walked out, being like 90 pounds, shaved off her head. She had no hair. She looked like a skeleton. I did not know who she was. My mother had a double look. She did not in the beginning recognize her. And she looked and she says, "Oh my God, that's Rita. That's my daughter." I didn't believe. My mother didn't believe. They kissed and hugged each other. And this was Rita. She was searching for us. She found out the others where we were. And we united after sitting shiva and not knowing that she was alive. And she told us the miracle how she survived. We didn't believe in the beginning. None of us believed. It was too good to be true. We didn't talk. We were just like frozen. We looked at each other and they said, "It's Rita." It is. And it's very hard to describe. It was a thing that we never believed that this miracle can happen. After this, we all united and we went to Munich. And in Munich, my father's dream was to go to Israel. And he was told that there's no way they can go to Israel. There's no legal immigration. If and when there will be a chance that he wants to sacrifice one of his girls to send as an orphan, there might be an illegal ship going to Israel with orphans, with young children, 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. And the only time they can go, if they have no parents, if they survive as little children, and they will be able on this illegal ship, a Greek ship, the Andia, go to Marseille and from Marseille to Haifa. And my parents decided that they're going to take a chance, and they picked me to go pose as an orphan, and the Jewish agency supplied me with false document, and they told me that my name will be Gisela Lachs. I never heard about this name before. What they told me, that if you ever, by chance, somebody recognize you and they call you by your name, make believe that you don't exist, that you're not this person, because I had parents and they didn't want anybody to know that I am not an orphan. So I constantly was aware of it. I remember vividly the day I arrived in Israel. It was so cold on this January morning, and I, a little girl, was frightened, sick, and did not believe that I arrived in Palestine. My father's dream, the dream that my parents always dreamed that we should go. We, all the girls from the ship, we fell and we kissed the ground in Haifa. There were people waving and singing the Israeli Hatikva. And I still did not believe that this is really happening. We just walked out one by one and we were hugged by the Israelis. We were welcomed with honey, with milk, with cake, and they were hugging each and every one of us. And they took us to a place in Tel Aviv called Beta Chalutzot. It was a school for girls. And I was together with girls from Poland, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, from France. And they were real orphans. And even the same girls did not know that that my parents survived, because I could never reveal this. We all lived together. We shared like one big family. We shared our clothes. We shared our food. We even shared our underwear. We were so close-knit together because each one of us had a different story to tell. I spoke Polish. I spoke Yiddish. Some of the girls spoke Czechoslovakian, some Bulgarian, some French. And we went to school there, and they were giving us lessons. And they started to teach us the Aleph-Bet, the Hebrew alphabet, and the Hebrew language. And it didn't took us too long to learn Hebrew. And we registered in school, and we shared lessons together. We talked. We were very happy. We sang. We danced. We joined the little youth movements. And we formed our own school, our own environment. And we were very, very happy there. A matter of fact, I had an uncle in Tel Aviv who was very well to do. He was like the Rockefeller of the United States. And they came to pick me up, to beg me I should live with them. But they knew already the story, what happened to my parents and to me. And I refused because I didn't want to leave my little so-called sisters, the girls that I came together, and I prefer to stay with them and live with them than to live in a beautiful home. And we lived happy forever after with all those girls. And then as I was growing up, I went to school and my parents came to see me once in a while. They got papers immediately to come to the United States. And my father and mother encouraged me to stay in Israel, to learn the language, to go to school, and with a dream that they will come to Israel too. Because then it was already the state of Israel. In 1947, I witnessed the birth of the state of Israel. I was there and free, and I saw our own nation come into this world. I cannot begin to tell you the feelings that I had. And my parents encouraged me to stay there. And I stayed in Israel. And I never dreamt that I would leave the state of Israel, because this was my father's dream, my parents' promise. The lesson what taught me, I will go back to the sage Hillel with a saying, if I am for myself, what am I? Who am I? If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? And I think it's very important to teach our children, and then when they grow up to teach their children, that to give of themselves, to help the less fortunate. And things like this should not happen, that this lesson should never be forgotten, because it can happen. And if we don't have the state of Israel, none of us is saved any place. I think Israel is not just our security blanket, it's our country. And I feel very strong that we as Americans, and I consider myself, by the way, an Israeli, even I'm an American citizen and an Israeli citizen. My heart is always in Israel. Only at this point, I will say, even as American, should never forget that this is the only thing we have, that we can walk with our heads high, because there is a state of Israel. And we should let the Israeli resolve their own politics and their own ideals and ideas, because it's their children, their sons and their daughters who are giving their life. And we can help them in different ways. We can help them with moral support, financial support, and with helping each and everyone, only not to dictate them what they should do and how they should do. And I have faith that one day there will be lasting peace. We're paying a very high price. However, let's not lose the faith. If we survive 2.5 years in a grave, the state of Israel will survive forever and ever.
Kol Chabad is running the National Food Security Program on behalf of the Israeli government. So we're reaching 30,000 families every single month throughout the country. And we started packing a lot of the dry goods that we distribute. We pack them here. Without food, you can't keep a job. A kid can't focus in school. Babies without formula, if that's what they need, they won't be able to develop properly. Any stage in life, so I've yet to meet someone which could survive without food. And that's how we get the volunteers to come in and help us with that process of putting on the labels, the stickers, filling the bags, sealing them, weighing them, putting them in boxes. Today we had Mexico, we had students from Canada, there's of course some Israeli families, fellow from Australia. You never know who's going to pop in that day, and it's always a thrill to meet another person from another part of the world that wants to take time out of their visit to Israel to help another person. You know, we've taken on this magnificent commitment to the government of Israel to facilitate and take care of National Food Security Program, but we can't do it on our own. There's a lot more families that need to be reached, and it boils down to funding. At every opportunity, we invite partnerships, people coming to Israel will help in hand. People that can't come They could help us from afar, but it's not a challenge that we could claim to be ours. It's everybody together. Everybody could do their part on their own level, and to help us reach every family in Israel. We look forward to the day when we'll be out of business, when there'll be no more need.